Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head to America once again, and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are also from a state that I haven't covered all that much on the channel, and one that I've heard has a very, very good beer scene. So that is something that we need to remedy over the next little while, and we'll see about making that happen because we get a number of quite random American beers here in Hong Kong. But these guys are a very new addition to their local beer scene. They've built up a very good reputation for themselves when it comes to different kinds of IPAs, particularly the New England Hazies, because those are very popular just now. And that's much of the reason why they've become so kind of hyped, if you like. So really quite cool to be able to review one of these beers for you here on the channel as well. So yeah, this one I've heard is very, very good. And it's a style that I do quite enjoy actually. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the state of Ohio in the American Midwest, although I'm not sure if it technically is the Midwest. I don't know where it starts exactly. But yeah, it's over towards Chicago, if you know where that is on the map. But yeah, we are going to go to a place called Sandusky, which is on the north coast of the state, right on the edge of the Great Lakes, just to the west of Cleveland. And we're going to have a look at my first beer then from CLAG Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called More MSG. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this should be quite interesting actually. I've heard very good things about this beer and the brewery, so definitely cool to review one of these beers for you here on the channel as well. It's not at its prime freshness, so I'm quite curious just to see how it's held up actually, because a lot of the American beers, I think because of the difference in the wheat, the fact that the wheat is just a little bit kind of thicker and smoother and things, I think the New England IPAs from the States tend to hold up pretty well actually and maintain quite a lot of their smoothness. But yeah, looking forward to trying this one nonetheless. So let's crack on with it and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done, or will do I should say, from CLAG Brewing Company in the future. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things, and that is being added to quite often at the moment because like I say, we get many random American beers here in Hong Kong, and do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well because there are some very, very nice things out there. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about CLAG Brewing Company. So CLAG Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, is based in Sandusky in Ohio, which is on the northern coast, about halfway across the state and to the west of Cleveland, and the company was founded back in 2020 beside Small City Tap House, which is its kind of sister or parent company, however you want to look at it, and that opened back in 2014. So the main man behind these companies is Ka Bui, who is a big beer nerd, and along with investors, he raised about 1.2 million to start the brewery side of the business, which is right next to the restaurant. So after starting Small City Tap House, which is very famous for its array of Asian food and its massive tap list of craft beers, he was inspired to start CLAG Brewing after his brother's success over in Richmond, and so he bought the adjacent building and knocked a hole in the wall, and that was the way into his brewery. But apparently there is a plan to convert the upper floors of these buildings into a boutique hotel, and things are going very well for the company now that COVID is over basically. But in the early days, CLAG recruited Kevin Kowalski, My apologies, Evan Kowalski, to come in as the head brewer in early 2020, and he's joined by Chris Schaefert, who is a former fireman, and he runs the business side of the operation. But apparently CLAG was chosen as the name because it stands for Cocky Little Asian Guy, and Ka is actually Vietnamese by ethnicity, if I remember correctly, and both of the locations can be found on Columbus Avenue in the city. So over the years, this brewery have gained a big reputation for their IPAs, and many of these have different tongue-in-cheek names, such as this one. But over the years, they've continued to expand the brewery infrastructure, and the tap room now boasts a total of 80 taps, many of which are of course CLAG's own beers, and they've got various things from across the state and further afield from what I understand. But as of March 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 220 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and yeah, they are one of the kind of hyped breweries in the state of Ohio at the moment. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about CLAG Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, interesting stuff. I couldn't find any information on the actual capacity of the brewery or what kind of brew kit they're operating at the moment, but yeah, that was that. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at the beer itself. But do make sure you check out the Untappd pages and stuff like that for the brewery if you get the chance. So yeah, the name of this one, as we said earlier, is More MSG. MSG, of course, what is it, mono sulfur glutamate or something like that? I forget. Yeah, but basically it's an additive into that's put into processed foods to kind of improve the flavour of them. It's supposed to be quite addictive actually. So yeah, that's kind of probably what they're kind of suggesting with this beer. It's got the little kind of salt shakery thing on the back there. But yeah, MSG in this case stands for Mosaic, Strata and Galaxy. So yeah, we know all of these hops quite well. The first two are American, the latter one is Australian. Mosaic about 14% alpha acid. It's going to give you a really nice kind of big tangerine type note. Strata is quite an interesting one. It can give you this kind of gooseberry and slightly strawberry type note. 14% alpha acid again, if I remember correctly, maybe 16. Galaxy, of course, is from Australia, 14% alpha acid, and it's going to give you a lot of kind of big juicy passion fruit, quite a lot of like mango, and also a wee bit of pineapple as well. Really interesting hop, that one. I do enjoy my Galaxy. But yeah, it says this one was canned on the 12th of June 2023, so we're actually drinking this one when it's just shy of 9 months old. So as I say, not at its peak freshness, but you know, I think a beer really should be drinkable in the can for about a year. Before then, you know, you want to drink these within the first 6 months normally. But yeah, this is 9 months. I think I bought this beer actually about 4 or 5 weeks ago. But yeah, you know, my phone wasn't fixed, so I couldn't film. So there you go. So yeah, probably it's kind of my fault as well that this one, I didn't drink this one. But the other thing to remember is you do want these to maybe sit in the can for between 2 weeks and a month before they're actually ready. And they've just kind of mellowed out enough to be nice and drinkable. So yeah, we'll just see how we get on. But 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA, this one. My first beer from CLAG Beer, who I've heard very, very good things about. So let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. So let's do this. Well, it's behaving itself in terms of carbonation anyway. It did feel a little bit solid in the can, but that should be enough. Should point out as well that this one is 473 millilitres, which is 1 American pint, 16 fluid ounces on the Freedom scale, for those of you who use that. But yeah, Freedom units, I should say. But yeah, this one, I have to say, looks very nice and pretty much what you would expect from the New England Hazy IPA style. So before the head disappears, we've poured about 80% of the beer out, and it's got a solid finger of, I would say, frothy, kind of cream coloured head. I wouldn't describe that as being perfect white. Some medium sized bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid, and it gets a wee bit foamier and also bumpier the further up that you go. But yeah, it looks quite nice. I think the lighting in here, I think the sun's just at an awkward height out the back. enjoying my kind of a Sunday afternoon beer before I go out for a wee walk. But yeah, this one looks pretty damn nice actually, and it's pretty much as you would expect for a New England Hazy IPA. I would describe this one as being a kind of mango juice colour. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts you put into the beer, will affect the colour of it as well. But when it comes to IPAs of pretty much any description other than fruit IPAs, you don't often have to care about that. But the level of haze in this one for an 8%er is quite interesting. It is a little bit soupier and gloopier, I would say. So remember, the haziness in these beers often depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. So yeah, that can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer. Not much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. One or two bubbles sticking toward the bottom of the glass, and a few little ones just going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look very, very nice, this one, I have to say that. And you can see, if I put my hand behind the glass there, it is pretty nice actually. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the appearance of this one. So let's go on to the aroma section then. Yeah, that is pretty nice. It smells as if it's in pretty good condition as well, I will say that. So surprisingly, the thing about this one is that it comes across as really quite citrusy. I would have expected it to be a bit more tropical leaning, because you've got Galaxy can be quite potent in this one, but then again the Strata's neither citrusy nor tropical. So but it strikes me as being quite tropical leaning, this hop actually, or this particular beer, but it smells really quite nice. As I've said before, for me there are 6 elements to think about when you have a New England Hazy. You've got the yeasty kind of farmhousey character, the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs, but you've got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things as well. Now the first thing that I get with this beer is it comes across as having quite a bit of wheaty bitiness to it, and that, again, we have to think about the fact that this beer is a couple of months old, because I find wheaty bitiness is a bit more prominent in the beer when it's older. But that said, you do still get quite a lot of the barley malt and a little touch of sweetness out of this one as well. I'm not getting so much in the way of like yeastiness and farmhousey character. It does have a little touch of sweetness to it as well. Good kind of bright green component, which I would have thought would have died down a wee bit by this point. Because if I was to smell this blind, I would struggle to tell you that it wasn't that fresh. And then on the fruity side of things, yeah, like I say, quite citrusy leaning. So let's just break that down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer is absolutely like a kind of fresh white bready bread crust, that's for sure. For me, when you sugar the beer up, you start to get a little bit more sweetness out of the bread, and for me, that's one of the key differences between the American malts and the European malts, for example, because the European malts tend to be a bit drier, I think. The German crystals and stuff like this, they just tend to have a bit more kind of dry, bready character to them. The American ones have that breadiness, but it's a bit more oily and almost sweet, if you like. And that's the thing, whenever the Americans get hold of a beer style, it always tends to be a bit sweeter, in my opinion. That's just me, although some of the European fruity sours, that's a different story. But yeah, for me, you get a lot of bread. There's the bread crust, there's a little tiny touch of like woodiness or something in there. Nice bit of sort of Jacob's cream crackers and things like that. I don't know what a good descriptor for Americans watching this video would be, but yeah, sort of cream crackery type character. Ritz crackers, maybe, if I remember seeing those in the States. It's got a little bit of that going on, but there's a lot of breadiness in this one. It's got quite a sweet, white, bready character to it. Further back on the nose, further back, you can definitely pick out a little bit of a... Yeah, further back, you can definitely pick out a little bit of a kind of... yeah, I would say that you can definitely pick out a little bit of a kind of like a more kind of wheaty bitiness coming out of the beer. There is some kind of oaty character coming out of this one, and as I've said, American wheat for me is smoother than European wheat. So whenever I say wheaty bitiness in the American beers, it's quite interesting because, you know, normally I find the wheat and the breadiness in American IPAs is just that little bit sweeter. Although some of the ones in New England, they have a little bit more of a kind of grainy breadiness to them actually, because the barley malt in America I think shows a wee bit more graininess, just different soil profiles and stuff like that. But yeah, the way that everything kind of pieces together in this one I think is really very, very nice. On top of that, the oatiness that's in here, you do get a nice little bit of creaminess out of this one, but you can smell a fair little bit of dryness out of the oats as well. And as I've often said in New England reviews, when it comes to oatiness in these New England IPAs, often it can be used as a measure, the kind of creaminess of the oats can be used as a rough measure of how old your beer is, if you like. So essentially, the younger the beer is, the creamier the oats are going to be, the older the beer is, the drier they're going to be. So there's a fair little bit of dryness coming out of the oats in this one, but still some creaminess is there. And I'm getting a wee bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing out of here. And at 8% when it's a New England hazy, that is kind of common to find that basically, and that'll be a bit of the booziness of the beer. But yeah, malty wise, this one smells quite nice. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So green component first. So like I said earlier, this one has quite a bright green component. Just going by the way the aroma is, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a mix of pellets and cryo in here, because there is a wee bit of that oiliness and wetness to the grassy character that you often get with like cryo hops. But yeah, with this one, there's a little bit of earthiness there, which I think is probably associated with the mosaic, but a very, very bright floral aromatic sort of thing. And then I'm also getting a good kind of grassy character, and you can smell this a sort of wet grassy character in there, like wet, freshly cut grass. And then yeah, you've got that nice kind of floral, zesty note in there as well, which is good. So on the hoppy side of things, I think this one still smells pretty damn fresh actually. But remember, you've got three kinds of hoppings in IPAs. Early edition hopping, which will give you a kind of deep, dank aroma, and that's usually happening, those are done within the first hour of the wort boil. Late edition hoppings, the last half hour of your wort boil, that gives you a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, and it gives you a very bright green component. Dry hopping takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that is all about flavour and aroma, gives you a very bright green component in terms of flavour and aroma as well. And yeah, usually New England IPAs use late edition and dry hopping for the most part. West Coast IPAs will use all three kinds. So yeah, you can kind of tell with this beer that it's been quite heavily late edition and dry hopped. So yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah. So on the fruity side of things, this is lovely. I mean, for me, the fruity side of this beer has some really nice, it has some like really nice kind of just soft tropical note to it, and you can smell the sort of gooseberry type thing from the strata as well. So yeah, it has quite a lot of juicy passion fruit to it, that's for sure. So the juicy passion fruit's obviously going to come from the Galaxy. When you sugar it up, you start to get a wee bit more of the kind of big, quite ripe mango. Definitely some softer pineapple in there as well. And as I said, I get quite a little bit of gooseberry out of this one as well, but some really nice bright, I think the citrusy character that I was pointing out earlier comes from the mosaic as well. And mosaic, normally it's interesting because I often get quite a juicy tangerine from it, but it's actually quite citrusy forward in this case. And then yeah, you've got some lovely sort of strawberry notes coming out of this beer as well, which is obviously the strata. Yeah, aroma-wise, this is really quite nice actually, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think the way that this goes together is it's really nice. So yeah, it smells lovely. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it's about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. Really looking forward to this. So yeah, this one is the more MSG, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA from CLAG Brewing Company in Sandusky in Ohio over in the US. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's really pretty nice. Yeah. It's still in pretty good condition, I have to say that. But yeah, definitely not quite as creamy and things as it, definitely not quite as creamy as it would be. I think it definitely not as kind of creamy as it would be fresh, but I get the feeling just from the way this beer's turning out that these guys, maybe their IPA, or I'm just speaking for one, but this strikes me as being a slightly more bitter. It's got a little bit more IBU to it, this one, and it's also got a bit more wheaty bitiness. And like I say, I've only tried one IPA from this brewery, but this one does strike me as having a bit more of a wheaty bitey and a bit more of a kind of higher bitterness character, which is always interesting. You know, you want a bit of a change of pace sometimes from these like just soft, creamy, juicy IPAs, but this is good. Yeah, so let's just break this beer down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. We'll start on that middle third of the palate as we always do. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer, it's got that lovely kind of soft, white bready, but slightly grainy bread crusty character. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you've got a little bit of there is a little touch of woodiness coming out of this one, which is quite interesting. So yeah, a little bit of woodiness, which is interesting in there, and then yeah, as you go further forward from that, it just has a wee bit more of a kind of crackery character as well. So it feels, yeah, you've got the bread crust, you've got a little bit of woodiness further forward. Then on top of that, the next layer up is like a sort of Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing. It's kind of like I was picking up in the aftertaste, and I would say you do get more of that kind of graininess and bitterness out of the beer the further into the aftertaste, but yeah, you've also got that kind of bigger spicy floral character, and also just a wee bit of the kind of woody crackery sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, I like that. So yeah, for me, this is good. I do like this. It's just a bit of a different pace. It's a kind of change of pace from what I've had from IPAs in recent times, and that's always good. It's nice to have something a wee bit different. Overall, I would say that this beer, it really is, yeah, definitely more wheaty. But yeah, on top of that crackery layer, you can feel there's a layer of like quite an airy white bread. Maybe there's a slight layer of like brown bread first. Then you get a more airy white bready layer, and above that you can feel that really dense wheaty type note in there. And the wheat has a good wee bit of smoothness to it, but at the same time, the further back you go on that middle third of your palate, the wheaty layer gets more and more bitey. And then yeah, above the wheat, you have a little bit more of above the wheat, you have a little bit more of kind of oaty character coming out of this one, which I do really like. So yeah, the oaty side of this beer, I think, is really interesting because, like I said, you get a kind of creamier line. You get a sort of more creamy oaty line down the middle of your tongue. But yeah, as you go out further toward the edges of your palate, it gives you a little bit more of a It's that sort of creamy oaty character, which I do really like. So yeah, you get more of that kind of oaty creaminess coming out of the beer, the further into the aftertaste that you go with it, for sure as well. But yeah, the dryness comes out more toward the edges of the palate. But in the dead centre of your tongue, you've got that little circle there, which gives you that sort of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing, which you would expect from, you know, double and triple New England IPAs. But that is good. Yeah, so on the middle third of the palate, I think that's everything we need to say. So let's go to the back third of the palate. And as I often say, back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. And remember, sweeter flavours tend to come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours tend to come out further back. So the base, the backbone, or if you go to that border region first, sorry, you get a little bit of brown bread in the base and the white bread on top, and it's quite a dry bread. But the base of the back third of your palate has more of a, yeah, it has more of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. So fresh white bready bread crust, and then on top of that, the bread crust is a little bit drier. You've got the cracker, which again is a little bit more kind of dry and grainy. Then you've got the brown bready layer, which is lighter, more airy and still drier, and then the white bready layer above that, which is lighter, airy and more drier. And then, pardon me, as you go over the top of that, you have a little bit more of a, yeah, you've got a little bit more of a, I would say, you've got more of that kind of wheaty bitiness coming out of this one, which I think is really quite nice. And then above all of that, you start to get the yeasty characteristics of the beer. So yeastiness for me always comes out on the top of that back third of your palate. So I think the yeastiness is really, you get this kind of dense and slightly sweet brown bready character sitting on top, or sitting in the middle of that yeasty character, and it's surrounded by a bit more of a brown bready character, more of a white bready character, I would say. Brown bread in the middle, white bread on the outside, and then a wee bit of like a crackery, bread crusty outer layer to the yeastiness. And as I say, all of that just sits on top of that back third of your palate, and you can definitely feel that the flavour on that back third of your palate is a little bit taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way this beer goes together is really quite nice actually. So yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me, this one. I really like how this pieces together. Yeah. So, hoppy side of the beer then. Let's go to the green component first. Like I said, this beer has a wee bit more IBU to it than some other New Englands that you might come across. So back corners of the palate, definitely a little bit of earthiness in there, and I think that's most likely to come from the mosaic, and I do suspect there's been a wee bit of early addition hop in this one. Either that or it's been quite heavily dry hopped and we're getting a wee bit more bitterness out of it because the beer is just that little bit older. But yeah, as you move further forward, there's a little bit of herbal character there, maybe a slight touch woody as well. Then as you come further forward along the sides of your tongue, there's definitely a bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity in there. Yeah, lovely big kind of floral aromaticity, bit kind of floral spice there. Then round the front curve of your tongue, the beer is absolutely a little bit lighter and more kind of grassy and zesty. So yeah, the green component in this one is quite nice, but you do get a little bit of an almost kind of piney resin character coming out of this one into the aftertaste. And yeah, all three of the hops in this one are capable of giving you that bit of piney resin character if they're used as early addition hops. So yeah, that's interesting stuff too. So on the fruity side of things then, let's look at that front third of your palate. So the border region between front and middle third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of brown bready character on the base and a bit of a white bready character on top. Then the base of that front third of your palate has a little bit more of a kind of, you get a bit of a sweeter bread crust there, the brown bread and the white bread, and those are obviously sweeter. Then you get that nice juicy bubble where the fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. Yeah, the juicy fruity esters that roll their way out of this one are really, really nice. In fact, it does have that wee bit more zest, that wee bit more kind of citrusy zest to it, and that matches up quite well with the slightly bigger floral nature that this beer has. But yeah, knowing these hops, the fruitiness turns out kind of as I would expect. At the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit more. I do get a wee bit of grapefruit actually, and you know, Galaxy is capable of giving you grapefruit sometimes. So yeah, a wee bit more of a grapefruity character there, but juicier, quite ripe passion fruit further forward from that, big ripe mango as well. As you move toward the middle of that front third of your palate, there's a wee bit more kind of softer pineapple, I would say, and you do start to get the kind of almost like gooseberry type thing from the strata, like underneath, like it feels like a sort of gooseberry and strata type note. So it feels like more a kind of gooseberry and almost melony type note as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue. And it's got a wee bit of almost limey character to it as well, like a kind of zesty lime. So that is really interesting in this beer. Yeah, you've got that big lemony zesty type character as well. And yeah, the way everything goes together in this beer, I think, is really, really quite nice. So yeah, the way it kind of pieces together, I think, is great. So yeah, interesting stuff. On the front half of the front third of your palate, you've got some nice, you know, you're getting some of the big zesty oily tangerine notes out of the, you're getting some big kind of oily tangerine notes coming out of this too. And that's, yeah, those are really nice, the kind of mosaic sort of things. Yeah, nice kind of big oily tangerine sort of notes coming out of this one. And yeah, those do linger into the aftertaste too. But yeah, overall, really nice New England IPA, this one. Quite happy with it. But yeah, more wheaty, bitey, and definitely more kind of floral and stuff too. So yeah, that's the end of the tasting section. So let's move to the mouthfeel quickly. Mouthfeel wise, this beer for me, top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation does have a wee bit of a prickle to it. That's maybe slightly due to the age of the beer. Mouthfeel has a little bit of dryness, this one, a bit more graininess and bitiness into the aftertaste, which is interesting. So it's got a wee bit of dryness to it, this one. Certainly not the creamiest of New England IPAs that you're going to come across, but again, that could be attributed to the age of the beer, potentially, not 100% sure. But yeah, IBU wise, this beer feels as if it's like, you know, got 60 or 70 IBUs to it. It does feel a little bit more bitter than some of the other ones I've had, for sure. The malty side of the beer has a bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a bit of creaminess and sweetness on top. Then you've got that lovely sort of juicy, fruity character coming out of it as well. So yeah, the way everything kind of goes together in this one, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one, and it certainly makes me curious to try a few more of CLAG Brewing Company's beers. And you know, maybe I need to go to Sandusky at some point and make a video at this brewery and try some of that Asian food. So yeah, could be an interesting out and about video. That we'll just need to see what happens. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from CLAG Brewing Company as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again whenever we get the opportunity. But yeah, this was the More MSG, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA. And it was pretty damn good. And this is from one of the hyped breweries over in America. So yeah, I'll keep my eye out for more of their beers. But until the next time, Sláinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out CLAG's social media, and I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Ciao just now.